please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Please note that this conference is being recorded. I would now like to hand the conference over to Mr. Sandeep Mahendra. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thanks, Karuna. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this call to discuss today's announcement. At the outset, I would like to apologize for the delayed start. This is Sandeep from the Investor Relations team in Bangalore. Joining us today on this call is Mr. Ravi Venkatesan, Co-Chairman of the Board, Dr. Vishal Sikka, Executive Vice Chairman, Mr. Praveen Rao, Interim Managing Director and CEO, Mr. M.D. Ranganath, CFO, and other members of the board and the management team. We'll start the call with some remarks by Mr. Ravi Venkatesan, Dr. Sikka, and Mr. Rao, subsequent to which we'll open up the call for questions. Please note that anything which we say, which refers to our outlook for the future, is a forward-looking statement, which must be read in conjunction with the risks that the company faces. A full statement and explanation of these risks is available in our filings with the SEC, which can be found on www.sec.gov. I'd now like to pass it on to Mr. Ravi Venkatesan.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining this call. This is Ravi Venkatesan. At the board of Infosys this morning, with great regret and sadness, considered and then accepted the resignation of Vishal Sikka as the Managing Director and CEO. Vishal is on the call, and shortly he will share his own reasons for coming to this decision. The board, completely understands and acknowledges his reasons, but we are extremely distressed and saddened by the circumstances and the final decision. In particular, we are highly distressed by the continuing allegations against both Dr. Sikka as well as members of the board. We have repeatedly called out the fact that we have had not one but three independent investigations in all the unsubstantiated claims and allegations, and none of the investigations have found any evidence whatsoever to substantiate any of the allegations. But as a result of all this, there has been substantial damage to the morale, and it has finally culminated in the departure of Vishal as CEO. I want, on behalf of all my colleagues on the board, to thank Dr. Sikka for his leadership of the company during these 3 years. In one of my earlier interviews this year, I said, I thank Vishal for making Infosys relevant again. This is a time of great industry transition, and I think Vishal did a great deal personally to paint an exciting vision for the future of the industry and Infosys' place in it, and we will remain grateful for that. In the 3 years, Vishal and his leadership team have also worked tirelessly to plant the seeds for the transformation of the company, and we're beginning to see evidence of lots of green shoots, and hopefully these will bear fruit fairly soon. The board has been very grateful in Dr. Sikka's agreement to continue to provide support to the board and the management in ensuring a smooth transition. Vishal has been appointed Executive Vice Chairman of the company effective today, and will hold this office until we find a permanent Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director, which should be no later than 31st March of 2018. During this period, Vishal has agreed that he will focus most on strategic initiatives, on continuing to hold key client relationships, which he excels at, and to make sure that technology development continues. We're also grateful that Praveen Rao has agreed to step up to the role of the Interim Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director, and he will report to Vishal and, of course, work with the whole board. There are a couple of things I want to say before we open it up, before I hand it over to Vishal. The board is incredibly committed to the strategic direction that has been articulated by Vishal and on the transformation journey that we have embarked on. There is no question of that. And so I'm sure we'll have opportunities to discuss continuity. We've also entrusted the Nominations and Remuneration Committee of the board to start work immediately on the task of finding a successor to Dr. Sikka. And obviously, the NRC will look at the talent we have within the company as well as externally in this process. So those are simply some opening remarks. I would now like to turn it over to Vishal.
Thanks so much, Ravi. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. First of all, I want to say thanks for last 3 years of really wonderful support from all of you and all of your commitment. I'm really proud of what we have achieved in the last 3 years. As many of you have heard me say over these years that our industry is going through a very significant shift. It is driven by automation. It is driven by a very pervasive digitization. And in this time, the endeavor of our company is to go from a company where we specialize in a global delivery model where we take a cost-oriented approach to value delivery of things that our clients do already, towards a model where we provide a value-oriented and innovation-oriented value delivery to our clients. We deliver things that nobody could do, and we bring, especially automation, to dramatically improve the productivity of the work that we do, to outpace the commoditization. And in parallel to that, we deliver innovation, meaning you don't just do the work that was happening before, but you do something that nobody else could do. So that has been the endeavor, and I'm really proud of the results that we have achieved, that our team has achieved. Praveen, Ranga, Ravi, Mohit, Rajesh, our entire team, Deepak, Parvinder, our delivery leadership, our sales leadership. If you look at the last 3 years, beyond the new services and the new software and zero distance and some of these fundamental innovative things that we have done that without losing focus on the underlying execution. And the company has done an extraordinarily good job, in my view, in that. When I started, our growth rate was not so good. It was half to one-third of the industry's growth rate. Attrition was extremely high. The senior management team was quite new. And that quarter when I started, we did something like 2.1 billion in revenue in that June 2014 quarter, Q1 of fiscal 15. And 3 years later, in the previous quarter, we did 265. So that was a pretty nice growth, and both in FY16 and FY17. In FY16, we were the industry-leading growth company. In FY17, we came, with the exception of Cognizant, if you include the inorganic. If you actually exclude the inorganic, we were the industry-leading again in FY17. And then we did that while keeping a very steadfast focus on margins. Last quarter, we did it 24.1. It was the first time in 5 years that we have beaten TCS in margins. And our utilization was at a 10-year high this past quarter. The utilization, including freshers, was at an all-time high. And the attrition has come down. In fact, Praveen and I don't even measure the regular attrition anymore. We only measure the high-performer attrition for the last 4 or 5 quarters, which is now basically in single digits. And if you look at our clients, we went from 12 $100 million clients when I started to 19. And large deals have gone from 1.9 billion that quarter when I joined to 3.5 billion from FY15 to FY17. And What I'm most proud of is the work that Ranga and the team have done in cash generation. And, when I started, the liquid assets were, including cash and cash equivalents, were somewhere around 4.9 billion, and now we are at a little bit more than 6.05. And this despite about 20,000 crore rupees or 2.85 billion in dividends, which we have done over the last 3 years collectively. So I'm really proud of the achievement. But even more than these numbers, and the numbers are more consequences of what we have done, it is really the underlying achievement, whether it is in creating a culture of innovation with zero distance. I mentioned fresher utilization earlier being all-time high. That is singularly because of zero bench. There are now close to 50,000 jobs on zero bench, and our bench is about 9,000 people. And so this is the reason that the freshers get an opportunity to work on things which gives them experience, gets them to break their cycle and get into the workforce. And of course, the software business, the homegrown Edge and NIA, and the acquired Panaya and Scava have formed an integral part of our work. Now it is 1.6% of the revenue last quarter, just from this new software that did not exist 2 years ago. And similarly, we have launched over the last 2 years or so 25 new services, which now represents 8.3% of our revenue. And we are counting on really rapid growth. So I'm really proud of these achievements, especially where we were compared to where we were 3 years ago. And, the reality is that the disruption that I saw in the industry and the opportunity to transform the company from a culture of cost-oriented delivery toward creating a culture of innovation that is a widespread innovation culture is something that I was really excited about, that I thought was something I would, it would be wonderful to go after that kind of a challenge. And over the last year, when you look at Brexit or President Trump's election, visa situation, the geopolitical situation, this was some unexpected headwinds. We had our situation with RBS and others. And this is also something that as a CEO you can deal with. And you can say that, this is, okay, we are in this job and this is something that is impacting everybody else in the world, and so we have to address that. In fact, it even becomes something fun, something challenging, something exciting to go after. And Ravi Kumar and I were talking earlier about the plan that we put together over the last 1 year. And people say it is because of the visa stuff, but the local hiring that we are doing here in the U.S. is something that we started 18 months ago. In fact, we had started 3 years ago with the first plan to hire 2,500 or so people locally back in the fall of 2014. And then we started our U.S. foundation, and the third logical step of that was the hiring of the 10,000 people in the U.S. And that sort of thing is something, those kinds of headwinds, those kinds of challenges you can deal with. But what's been going on over the last, 4 or 5 quarters, and especially over the last, since February of this past year or January of this past year, is really, there have been this continuous drumbeat of these allegations and news stories and the same stuff about Rajiv's separation and Panaya and all of this stuff over and over and over and over and over again. It is absolutely sickening. And what it does is, every day you wake up, whenever I'm home in California, you wake up in the morning and there is some news story or the other asking basically a 4,000th regurgitation of the same nonsense. And it is, at some point you just say that, this is too much. At some point you just say that, this is too much. And I found that I was spending way too much time on dealing with those things. But even that is a surface damage. This is responding to the noise, responding to the chaos on the surface. What it does is it makes it difficult to carry out the change agenda. You're talking about creating a culture where we have right now, as I speak to you, something like 9,500 projects in the company. And this is we have been working, Praveen, myself, Ranga, Ravi, to create a culture where these 9,500 projects can think of themselves as 9,500 entrepreneurs. And the Zero Distance Initiative is about that. And so it slows down your ability to make that kind of a change happen. And that is a disservice to the company, that is a disservice to the job. It prevents us from creating value. It just creates a sort of a negative environment overall in which to do our work. And so I've been thinking about that for some time. I had 2 long meetings with Ravi since he became co-chair over the last couple of months. Sesh has been here in California in the last couple of weeks, so I have met him 6 or 7 times. And finally, I just got to the point where I couldn't do it anymore. And over the last few days, I've been thinking this through with the board to see what could be done here. And finally, we came to the conclusion earlier today, like Ravi said, that I just cannot do this anymore, and I want to leave. And I'm very thankful that the board has asked me to be the executive vice chair, and I'm looking forward to that. As we look at now, if you look at our commitment, I'm here. I'm the executive vice chair. I'm going to stay until the 31st of March or until a great stable management team is established. Praveen is here. Ranga, Ravi, Mohit, Rajesh, our entire leadership team. And we had an extraordinary performance in Q1, despite the distractions and so forth. I'm really proud of what the team delivered. You know, we did 2651 in reported revenue and 24.1 margin and all-time high, basically close to all-time high in utilization. And 6 quarters in a row, we improved revenue per employee. So that is a reflection that our team is absolutely focused on execution. And I want to assure you that this quarter, the Q2, is the same absolute, resolute focus on execution. That's what we are continuing to work on. Every day, Ravi and Mohit and Rajesh and Praveen and I do these calls with the teams, and we are focused on cash generation. As you know, Ranga will talk about this in a little bit. We have talked about we are working on the buyback. We got the regulatory approvals for that. And being a 17% ADR holder, we are the only Indian company which has more than 10% of holdings in ADR. So we are governed by multiple regulatory regimes in different ways. And so Ranga has been working incredibly hard getting this done over the last several months. I mean, I take my hat off to Ranga and to his team for the work that they have done to make this happen. So we are absolutely focused on Q2 and on the rest of this year. We have this dual challenge of continuing the operational efficiency and execution focus while growing the new services and new software businesses in a fundamental way. And Praveen and I are going to start working with our clients. Ravi and Sesh and Praveen, Ranga and I are going to work with our investors over the next few weeks. So all is well. We are going to have a absolutely smooth and issue-free transition here. And the board, the leadership, Praveen, Ranga, Ravi, Mohit, Rajesh, everybody is committed to the direction that we are going in. And I am here. And in the interim setup that the board has put together, Praveen will continue to report to me. And so this is what I want to share. And perhaps I can request Praveen and Ranga to say a few things, and then we can perhaps take some questions from you.
Thanks, Vishal. As I echo comments made by Ravi and Vishal as well, it's unfortunate development, but we are focused on dealing with it and moving forward. As we have done in the last few quarters, our team is fully engaged in execution. We'll focus on delivering on Q2 and rest of the year. We will ensure that we have extra focus on all engagement with all the stakeholders, clients, investors, employees as well during this difficult period. We have a very strong leadership team, and my belief is that, and I'm very confident that we'll be able to continue our focus on execution. We have a very strong vision, and we have seen the vision deliver fairly good performance over the last several quarters. So we just need to focus on executing and delivering on the vision. And with the backing of the strong leadership team that we have in place, I'm very confident that we will deliver on the current quarter and rest of the year. Ranga?
Thanks, Vishal. Thanks, Praveen. First of all, thanks, Vishal, for your kind words. And as both Vishal and Praveen said, we are focusing on execution. And as you know, on August 16th, we announced saying that the board will be meeting on August 19th to consider the buyback of equity shares. I think that board meeting is scheduled for August 19th. So I think the focus continues to be on strategy execution, as Vishal and Praveen said, and we are all going to work as a team focusing on the execution.
So now we can open up the call for questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin with a question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on your touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Thank you. First question is from the line of Sandeep Agarwal from Edelweiss. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. And one question to...
excuse me, this is the operator. Mr. Agarwal, can you come closer to the phone, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
One question to Vishal and then one question to Ravi. So first of all, Vishal, I remember you clearly saying once that, the passion with which people join Infosys is something which, drives the reason you being in Infosys, and that was probably one of the reasons why you joined Infosys. So I just wanted to understand that, given such an excellent performance since you joined on all parameters, don't you think that means I understand the distractions were too much, but do you think that your incredible work would have automatically, slowed them down over a period of time? And we already have a very good track record of 8-9 quarters of excellent performance since you joined, while everyone was losing a bit per employee and all those things. We were gaining on those parameters. So I just wanted to understand, wouldn't that would have automatically slowed down these noises? And to Ravi, I know it is too early. Just wanted to understand what will be the priority. Like, would you like to, bring in some international tech CEO or something like that, or you would like to, again, look after people who had probably been part of Infosys in past? So, what will be the strategy and how you are looking at it?
So, first of all, on my side, I guess we thought about it, and over the last few days, together with the board and especially with Sesh and I, we discussed this. It hasn't gone away in the last 5 quarters or so, and it has just gotten worse, and it has gotten increasingly malicious and personal. And so this is just I just felt that. In the end, the company's performance, the company is bigger than all of us. The company is stronger than all of us. The company will live longer than all of us. And therefore, the institution comes first. And that is what has to be done. And we cannot, frankly, everyone on the board really asked me to reconsider this. And that was one of the key arguments. I know Ravi mentioned this to me, and Sesh mentioned this to me, that look, Vishal, Ranga mentioned this to me, that with performance, things will slow down and so forth. But it is not only that things would slow down, which they were not showing any indication of, but it hurts performance. Some of these stories in the media are completely nonsensical. And like Ravi said earlier, some of these allegations, we have had those investigated over and over again by different people and spent tons of money doing these. And at some point, you just have to say that, it drains so much energy, and it does not create an atmosphere that is conducive to transformation. And frankly, every day that goes by, it is not that the world is standing still. You get deeper in the hole. So this has to be done, and I just felt like this was the time to to do it?
Let me take the second question. In terms of priorities, obviously making sure that in spite of all that is happening, the management team stays focused on delivering a strong Q2 is top priority, and the board will do everything necessary to support the team in accomplishing that. You asked a question about CEO succession. I think that's an incredibly important one. We have to get that right. Clearly, we are going to apply our minds to that, but we need somebody who is transformational. I think that has become clearer and clearer to us over these 3 years, that the industry is changing at an accelerating rate, and all of us have to move faster and to embrace new things. So we need a person with the transformational mindset who shares this vision. We cannot afford to go, do a reset on the strategy or go back on it. We need somebody. This is a large company. It is incredibly complex. It has 200,000 people spread out across the world. So the leader has to be, like Vishal was and is, somebody with an incredible people connection, okay? And because you have to take the whole complex system along. Now, I told you that we have some real strong leaders coming up inside, and we obviously will look at these people. We'll have to look outside. But Infosys has also got an incredibly strong culture, and so the challenge for anybody coming from the outside, as Vishal experienced, is to manage those cultural adaptations. First, you have to ingratiate yourself into the culture and then transform it in the ways that you feel necessary. And so I think it's going to be not just important, but challenging to find the right candidate. The board is hopeful and optimistic, and in our discussions with Vishal, I think he also said he shared our optimism that this is still an iconic company because Vishal sowed the seeds for transformation 3 years ago. We are arguably a little further ahead in our transformation than many of our peers and competitors. Surely that will be an attraction. So we're still hopeful that we will find someone great to fill Vishal's shoes. Also, this is going to take time. These things don't happen overnight. And we hope in this period, some of the founder-related issues can be put decisively to bed so that the next person has a calmer time.
Okay, thank you. That's all from my side.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Anantha Narayanan from Credit Suisse. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions as well. But before that, Vishal, just wanted to thank you for all the insights you've given us in the past 3 years. I think it's a pity the way you had to leave, but please accept our best wishes for whatever you choose to do in the future. And coming to my questions, the first one was to Praveen. Praveen, this will clearly, I think, create a lot of water cooler chat within the company for the next few weeks. And I'm sure, even customers will be wondering as to what's really happening out here. So as investors, should we be sort of prepared for any sort of near-term disruption at all? And if not, are there any specifics that you intend to take over the next few days, both with employees and with customers? That was the first question. The second one was to Ravi. So Ravi, I think you just mentioned this in your previous response as well. But do you foresee any threat to the ability of the board of attracting external candidates, just given all the noise between the promoter and the board? And is there any weight to the ability of the board of attracting external candidates, just given all the noise between the promoter and the board? And is there any way that you can mitigate this threat? Thank you.
Hey, Anant, thanks so much for the kind words, man. I really appreciate it. And like Ravi said earlier, I want to give you a very, very clear assurance that I'm still here. I haven't gone anywhere. We are going to see this through, and clients will not see a disruption. The management team will go about this in a very systematic way and a very smooth way. And Praveen and I are going to start talking to the top 100 or so clients starting this weekend. And already a couple of them have called me in the last couple of hours, and I have a whole slate of meetings tomorrow here in California and so forth. So I want to assure all of you that there's nothing abrupt about this. It's the announcement. I think you have to do it in the way that we have done it. But the business continues. This is an iconic company, and it is bigger than all of us, and it's going to continue. And so I just want to assure everybody about that.
Anant, this is Praveen here, and just to add what Vishal has said, he will be around for at least for the next 9 months or till the new management team is in place, and we'll do to make sure that the succession is smooth. While in the short term, there will bound to be some distractions, some noise, and this is something probably a continuation of what we have seen in the last few months. There is no easy solution. We have to keep on communicating with all the stakeholders, employees, clients, investors, and so on, and just focus on execution. Because at the end of the day, once you start performing and once you start focusing on the results and outcomes, then many of this will die away. So we have to probably spend a little bit more extra focus, attention on communication. There is no shortcuts, to be honest. But in some sense, it's a continuation of some of the distractions we have seen in the recent past, and that's something we need to continue to address. And I'm very happy that Vishal is still around for the foreseeable future, and we are very optimistic that we should be able to manage this transition in a relatively smooth manner.
So should I try and answer the question on the CEO search? I think you're right. It is not going to be easy. On the plus side, we have the Infi sort of brand and magic, and I still believe that it's strong. I think we have momentum in the business. We have a lot of the exciting aspects of transformation which are beginning to become evident. We have a good team. This event has brought the board together in a cohesive way, which is just fantastic. And so hopefully, any future CEO will sense that and be, draw courage from that. I think the clear sort of worry would be is the founder issue been put to bed or not. I think we've reached a point clearly where we know that it cannot continue in this fashion. I'm always an optimist, and I believe that in the coming weeks we'll have to find ways to put that decisively to bed, so that by the time we have a couple of viable candidates, hopefully there is more stability around that issue. We'll work hard to ensure that. And as Vishal said, he's going to be part of that process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Ravi Menon from Elara Securities. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. May I first say that, on behalf of the sector, we have seen Infosys incremental revenue market share significantly. And, we hope that we are not going to see that, kind of weaken as he leaves the company. And I have a question about what would you say to the clients who have embraced the platforms, like Mana and Nia, or even Panaya and Scala? How would you convince them that there is still a product roadmap because there must have been a vision when you started these, and now there is a finite end to Dr. Sikka's term here. How would you convince clients that who put their dollars into it and who also invested time into this that they will still have something that's relevant?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that I'm still here to guide along the change, and especially the work that we've been doing with the client. The software business is, in fact, the three of the leaders of the software business are sitting here with me as I speak. Naveen, who's our CTO, and Abdul, who runs the platform business, and Sudhir, who runs all the product management. We have a very strong team led by Parvinder, and the software business is something. Don't forget that the software business at Infosys is something that was there before Vishal Sikka came in. Pinnacle has been around for a long time. I'm really proud of what we have done with Pinnacle. In fact, for one of the huge telcos, we recently, which is also getting into payments through a payment bank, recently, this was one of the last technical reviews I have had in the last few weeks. We just launched a 36,000 connections per second deployment of Pinnacle. And this was, compared to where Pinnacle was 3 years ago as a product, this is something that we are incredibly proud of to help such a massive scale deployment of Pinnacle. We deployed Pinnacle at the Department of Post when all the post offices became bank branches, and with a massive deployment. So that is something. Pinnacle has been around for decades in the company, and EdgeWorld was founded before I got here. Of course, we have completely revamped the product line. All the products, in fact, that are continuing are completely new now. And NIA was built from scratch over the last 2.5 years, close to 3 years. In October, I remember we launched the Infosys Information Platform, October of 2014. So it's soon going to be 3 years since that. And of course, Panaya and Skava. I just met with the Skava leadership team yesterday here in California, and Panaya is doing extremely well. In fact, you hear Panaya, unfortunately, for all the wrong reasons in the news. But Panaya has become such an integral part of our work that it is, you simply cannot go to an SAP or an Oracle upgrade project without Panaya in the mix. It is such a differentiator. So it's a very integral part of the work that we do. Ravi and his team have just launched a NIA Automation Center, which is a enablement of NIA for all our service lines at a massive scale. We have launched a special zero-distance version just for NIA adoption. So these are all structural things around how these products are becoming an integral part of the company. And so I'm not worried about that roadmap at all. And it is something, this company does an exemplary job of maintaining other people's products, so I have no doubt that we can maintain our own.
So, all due respect, what we said, actually makes me feel more that innovation is essential to the future of these products. I think that the difference is huge because of these initiatives that were taken.
Excuse me, this is the operator. So your voice is breaking up. We can't hear you clearly. We still can't hear you, Mr. Menon. Okay, we take the next question. In the meanwhile, from the line of Viju George from JP Morgan, please go ahead. Viju George from JP Morgan, your line is unmuted. You may go ahead with your question, please.
Yeah, thank you for taking my question. I think most of my questions have been answered, but I'd like to specifically, thank Vishal for his contribution to Infosys and to the evolution of our thought process as well over the last 3 years. Wish you all the best, Vishal. I have a question for Ravi, if I may. Ravi, I think Vishal has already articulated, his strategic vision for the company quite candidly, quite clearly over the last 3 years, repeatedly. If a new candidate were to come in and maybe change elements of that or drastically rehaul that, how open are you to that? That's my question, really. In other words, should we expect an about turn, from all that Vishal stood for, potentially in the new candidate, in case the thought process is different?
Absolutely, emphatically not. Vishal, this is no longer just Vishal's vision. It started out that way, but over the last 3 years, I think many of us have engaged in, and now this is very much institutionalized. This is now Infosys vision, and Vishal, thank you for embedding it deeply. I think the management team buys into it. The board completely endorses it. In particular, a few months ago, the board constituted what's called a committee of directors, led by Fesh, our chairman, Prahlad, and myself. And through that COD, we've engaged very deeply with Vishal and the management team in shaping it and helping accelerate the execution of it. So I think there is now institutional commitment to this direction. So I don't think there is any risk of rollback. However, strategy is emergent. The world changes. You learn new things, and therefore there is course corrections that you make, and we expect that will be a natural part of the evolution of this strategy. But no, we are utterly committed to it. I've been, beyond Vishal's own tremendous articulation of the industry change and Infosys direction, I myself have, been writing from time to time. You can refer to my article about the Kodak moment. I think it should give you some comfort that I, Saish, the whole board, and the whole management team is bought into this direction.
Sure. And I think Ananta also raised this question about how you would be able to attract a proven talent, a transformational talent from outside, given what has happened. My question is that despite the best efforts of the board to repeatedly assuage the concerns of the founder member team on various counts, and having gone out of your way to do that, what makes us, what can give us the assurance that, certain issues may not arise even in newer cases, and even if you go out of way to satisfy those concerns, those issues won't keep cropping up. That's probably the more worrying aspect here.
I think that's a fair question. Over the last year, the board has engaged in dialogue with the founder and the founders to understand real concerns and address them, find solutions within the boundaries of the law, as well as without compromising our independence. We think we've done everything that is reasonable, but at some point, being an independent board, we make our own decisions. That has not gone over particularly well, as you can see. We've reached a situation which is not tenable, okay? And so we have to find some permanent solution that gives Infosys stability and the new CEO and the management team the opportunity to focus on driving this, both execution and transformation. What exactly that's going to look like, I'm not in a position to sit here today and articulate, but we will have to find a stability, and meanwhile, as an independent board, we have to give management the full support that they deserve and the air cover that they deserve to execute. Hopefully, by the time we have candidates for Vishal's successor, there is greater stability than we have this morning.
Sure. Thank you, and all the best.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Yogesh Agarwal from HSBC. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Vishal, firstly, it's unfortunate you are leaving at this stage of the transformation journey. We certainly miss your enthusiasm and passion for technology. I have this question for Ravi. Ravi, I understand Vishal is leaving because of the motive fault, as you mentioned in the press release as well. But from a legal perspective, what powers Infosys and the board has to provide independence to the new CEO as well? Because a similar thing can arise going forward, that Murthy isn't happy with certain steps of the new CEO, and we go through the again vicious cycle. So, as a board and as the company head, how will you prevent that happening again?
So I think it's a fair question. We have to, it's a reality that we have a strategy and we have to execute on the strategy. The strategy, fair question. We have to, it's a reality that we have a strategy and we have to execute on the strategy. The strategy calls for us to take some bets, and sometimes some of the bets will come through and sometimes it may not come through, but we have to have leap of faith. We have to stay focused. We have to focus on the outcomes, and in any outcomes there will be intermediate milestones. I'm very optimistic that as long as we are able to demonstrate steady progress towards the outcome, we should be able to deliver. What has happened is an unfortunate thing. There is, again, no guarantee that these things will not repeat. But as Ravi had said earlier, reiterated earlier, they'll continue. The board will continue their efforts in terms of trying to find a final solution to this, so that not only for me as an interim CEO, but for whoever new management team coming in future, that this thing is of the past. That is the hope, at least. But end of the day, we have to do what is really required, because it's an iconic company. The industry is going through transformation. We have a great opportunity to transform the company and take it to the next century. So from that perspective, we can't control we can't really worry about what is not in our control. We just have to focus on doing the right things, what is right for the company, what is right for all the stakeholders. And I'm very hopeful that we'll be allowed to do and focus on that.
Yeah, that was Praveen. Ravi, what I would say is, at the end of the day, investor confidence is crucial. And, our theory has been that performance is what will continue to earn the confidence of all of you. And so as long as the board enjoys that investor confidence, we are quite hopeful and optimistic about being able to stay the course.
Yeah, just to add, this is Ranga here, to what both Praveen and Ravi said. I think if you look at the purely financial standpoint, if you look at our balance sheet, it was never stronger than it is today. More than, as Vishal said, more than 40,000 crores of cash balance, highest ever, and we're also focusing on some of the buyback announcement, etc. Then the cash generation, even last quarter, was a net profit to cash conversion is higher. We've been holding margins steady despite other things. I think the focus of the management team continues to be, as both Vishal and Praveen said, will be on execution and making sure that we focus on the clients, on employees, and our execution, the new services, which was 8.3% of revenue last quarter we reported, and that continues to be our focus. And from the balance sheet was never stronger than it is today, from whichever angle if you look at it. So we continue to focus on execution.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Pankaj Kapoor from JM Financial. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thank you. My question actually is for Ravi. Ravi, in a recent interview, you mentioned that the board is open to giving a formal role to Mr. Murthy. So after today's development, is that something which is on the board's agenda? And given that the concerns that he has repeatedly raised are actually more around the governance, should we expect some changes in the board as well? Thank you.
That's a good question. As we just put out a release shortly before the call, and in that we stated that given the commitment of the board to remain independent and pursue the strategy that we have chosen, at this point the board has no intention of inviting Mr. Murthy to play a formal role in the governance of the company.
Thank you, and all the best.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Divya Nagarajan from UBS. Please go ahead.
Hi, I think the most important question just got answered, but I'd like to thank Vishal for his contributions. It's been very interesting to hear your very dramatically different thoughts on the industry, and we do hope and wish you great success going forward. Just one follow-up to whatever we've been seeing so far, and I think it's been addressed in earlier questions as well, but I think the critical thing to address here is this issue of corporate governance that keeps coming up, and clearly we've done everything as we can to kind of address those issues, but what else can be done so that these issues don't crop up again, especially since this is the major issue that seems to have been distracting everyone from everyday work?
As you correctly have said, we believe we've done everything any good board must do, both in terms of investigating this not once, but 3 times, by independent, most recently by a globally respected independent investigative firm in the form of Gibson Dunn. They had complete unfettered access to everybody, all documentation, including the founder, and they found no evidence whatsoever. We believe we made the appropriate and necessary disclosures. To my mind, no company has gone as far as we have in terms of our disclosure. So we are intending to simply keep moving. Okay, we're going to move on. That's not to say that some of the questioning will completely end, but in the interest of the institution, its clients, its employees, and all of you, we have to stay focused on the road ahead, not continuously be looking at the rearview mirror. And while it may be challenging to do so, that's our intention.
Well, that's all the best.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Arvind Ramnani from KeyBank. Please go ahead.
Hi, Vishal. Really sorry to see you go. I guess just you wanted to fully understand. You indicated that you're really not looking to kind of really put a reset on the strategy, and assuming you find the right leader, will the leader face the same issues from the founders? Because if you kind of look at the root cause of what's happening is kind of the friction between the founders and the CEO. How do you systematically solve the founder-related issues? And will that also prevent you from hiring a very qualified CEO?
I believe we've answered that a couple of times. The dialogue with the founders to find reasonable solutions has worked partially, but eventually it has not. Our theory of change and stability now is that focus on performance. Every quarter, earn the confidence of our investors, shareholders, employees, and eventually, hopefully, these issues will recede. So, I think investor confidence is the key to, I think, getting to a better state.
I mean, is there discussion of buying back the founder shares, or is that not being discussed?
No, that has not been discussed. As you know, we are considering a share buyback, and that's about it.
Great. Thank you and good luck. Vishal, wish you the very best in the future endeavors.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, man.
Next question is from the line of Ashish Chopra from Motilal Oswal Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. First of all, Vishal, thanks for all your inputs over the past 3 years and wish you all the best. My question is to Ravi. So while it's been answered in part in terms of your views around having founder representation on the board, but just wanted to understand, the way forward that you see in terms of a smooth functioning for the board, as the distractions have not been limited to the operations of the CEO, but the board at large. And so, I mean, while not a founder representation, but do you think that, you may need to have any other changes on the board at this juncture, maybe a middle way out, and not just limited to the selection of a new CEO, but just to ensure an overall smooth functioning, till some of these things kind of settle down?
We'll consider those.
Okay. I think that's it from my side. Thanks and all the best, guys.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Abhishek Bhandari from Macquarie. Please go ahead.
Vishal, I just had one question for you. Can anything make you reconsider your decision?
No, that is, we went over that over the last few days. In fact, Ravi asked me earlier today as well. But no, I mean, if you look at some of the questions that all of you have asked, it does point out to the fact that a new beginning creates an opportunity for I think you can think of it as, in product development these days, we think about minimum viable products and we think about viability thresholds and iterations, rapid iterations. And so we can think of this as a 3-year journey where we did a lot of work. And now a new team can come and take the learnings from this. Like Ravi said, the board is committed to the strategy that we are on, because frankly, it is a somewhat obvious. It's pretty clear what needs to be done. Software is eating the world, therefore we have to get software to eat services, and if it is somebody else's software, then you are leaving that money on the table, so it has to be our own software, etc., etc. So it's a very clear path forward. And with regard to the working environment and the overall atmosphere, my own sense is that that this will, make it easier for a new team to be successful.
The reason I'm asking is that you still have, 6 months for the handover, and let's say certain things change. Is there any remote possibility? Thanks.
Well, thanks. I mean, that's what can you say? We'll see how it goes, but right now we have made a pretty clear commitment to the direction forward, and the nominations committee, like Ravi said, is going to start looking for a new CEO. Praveen and I are here, and we are going to make sure that there is no slippage, there is no skip beats here, and I will help the new leadership get to the reins as much as I can, as well as I can, and I think that's what we are looking at. But who knows what life brings.
Sure, thanks.
By the way, I don't have any other plans. It's not that I have something lined up or I have no idea what I'm going to do, and hopefully we find a good CEO from inside or outside soon, and then I can take some time off and go surfing.
Sure, thanks, and all the best, Vishal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person is from the line of Avinash Vajrani from Jupiter. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for taking the question. The question is really addressed to Ravi. And, what we've seen so far is a lot of dirty laundry being washed in the public. I'm just wondering, should the board not take the responsibility for not shielding the management from these so-called allegations? And what is it that what is the board doing in terms of seeking investor feedback? Because I've not seen the board members in years seeking any investor feedback. How do you know what the investors really want rather than just taking feedback from the analysts? And if you look at the call this morning, most of the questions are coming from analysts. And is there something not really dysfunctional at the board level that needs to be addressed here? If we just look at the composition of the board, we have 2 joint chairmen and an executive vice chairman. Who is the boss? Maybe if I could have your thoughts on this, Ravi, please. And clearly, it's a sad day for us, the investors, to see Vishal leave, and, our personal thoughts aside, and, all the very best wishes to him. But I'd really like some thoughts, Ravi, on the board.
No, it's a very fair, if difficult question. Personally, I have gone out publicly more and more in recent weeks, and especially so last week, to reiterate the board's complete support for both the strategy, and I did so unambiguously on television and in print. And Vishal knows that he and the management team has the full support and confidence of our board. We have tried very vocally to, put the right perspective on the unfounded allegations that have been out there, and tried our best to ignore them and keep on moving. At some point, I think it has just got to Vishal. I think you raise a much more important point about, going out and determining what our investors actually feel. And we've been doing some of that. We intend to do much, much more of it right away. At our very last board meeting on July 13th, we went through a refresh of the committees of the board. And one of the major changes was that I stepped up as the chair
of our Stakeholder Relations Committee, and that is in a significant part acknowledgement of the importance of this. So Sesh, Vishal, myself, Ranga, Praveen, we're going to be hitting 5 or 6 cities pretty hard in the next 2-3 weeks, doing exactly what you suggest. So I thank you for that reminder.
I think just...
And just to add, from my side, I would say that clearly Praveen is in charge as the senior-most executive, as the managing director and CEO. Even if it is an interim basis, he is the MD and CEO now. And I am the senior-most executive in the company. And then, of course, Ravi and Sesh and Prahlad run what we call the committee of directors, which works closely with us. And so there is no problem. And in terms of the command and control, the buck clearly stops with Praveen, and then so far as I can help with me.
I think there is a more fundamental question here, and it's clearly not whether the management enjoys the support of the board and indeed the shareholders. I think the question is whether the board enjoys the support of the investors and the shareholders. And, as an investor, there's clearly been a failure on part of the board to get the company in a situation where it is now. And nobody seems to want to address this question, either in the press or elsewhere. And it's not a battle that needs to be fought in the press. We call, the repeated allegations and counter-allegations and, founders. The founders are shareholders, right? You cannot take, you cannot only have discussions with one set of shareholders simply because they were founders. The board needs to address how to handle the entire bunch of shareholders. The board must represent all shareholders and not just some part of shareholders. And, as an investor, I think, the board needs refreshing. And, I will leave it at that. And,
No, your point is...
on your roadshow.
No, we note your point, and we hope to address what you say in a matter of weeks.